Hello everyone and welcome to this episode, the return to work one of the Women Talking About Learning podcast. I'm Andrew Jacobs. First of all, I have a cold and this is why the voice is even deeper than usual. Normal service will be resumed quickly, I hope. Returning to work after a career break can be a daunting challenge, particularly for women who often juggle numerous responsibilities at home. To discuss this further, we have two fantastic guests who talk about how women can successfully reintegrate into the workforce. Our first guest is Clair Madeley. Clair is a technology trainer and learning specialist with her lived experience of returning to work after career transitions. She knows firsthand what it's like to navigate confidence dips, identity shifts, and the practical realities of stepping back into a role. Being a guest on this podcast, Claire wanted to help people reconnect with their skills, making the return to work journey feel more supported and genuinely human. Our second guest is Edgar. Jo is a freelance executive coach and leadership trainer focusing on behavioural change with over 20 years' experience in learning and development. Her passion lies in coaching women who are returning to the workplace after a career break, whether due to maternity leave, raising a family, caring responsibilities, redundancy, or life taking them into a different direction. Recorded in January 2026, this is Women Talking About Learning. This is Claire and Jo talking about returning to work.
Hi Jo, nice to have you here. What has brought you into the conversation today about returning to work? What's your personal experience?
Hi Claire, lovely to see you. It's a subject matter that I'm really interested in. I've had a couple of return to works during my working career. One was after maternity leave for my first daughter, and then I had two other daughters. I took an 8-year career gap. So it's something I'm passionate about, and I know that some of the difficulties that women face when they've taken a career break and then go back to the working environment. And what made you choose this subject as well?
Yeah, very similar experiences as yourself, Jo. Many different returns to work, and I feel that it does very much impact women especially. And so just feeling the other side now of that big 5-0 and I think it's about 4 or 5 different returns to work, that what I experienced, and if it can help anyone else on their path, I'm all for it.
Yeah, definitely. If it could just help one person, you feel like you've made a really good impact.
So what's the main struggles, do you think, that women in particular face when they return?
I think it does affect women a lot more as parents. I think because they're normally the sole sort of care provider. I think confidence, through my coaching work and the women that I've spoken to, confidence seems to be the really big one. Imposter syndrome, thinking, I've been out the workplace, am I good enough? Can I be able to do the things that I used to do, especially if women are in a more senior position? They're worried about those lack of skills. I think technology, again, is a big one. People just assume that technology's moved on so much, whereas in fact, most offices use Microsoft and Word and PowerPoint and Excel, and they're just as much the same as they were 10, 15 years ago. I mean, obviously AI is a big, scary sounding word if you've been out the workplace for a while. Get your head around that, whereas in fact, these things aren't making that much of a big difference as they would have done when women were working there before.
I couldn't agree more. And I have firsthand experience of that, being in, tech training and sort of L&D space.
Yeah.
I had a career break. Well, I did a mixture in between. Having a career break and out of IT training particularly, had that massive fear. And as you said, funnily enough, you go back and not that much has changed. Yes, we are still using Microsoft Office. Yes, the interfaces might have changed slightly. Yes, some other processes might have come in. But then I suppose it is just about perhaps upskilling or building that confidence. But we put that fear, don't we, in place about the imposter syndrome that you suggested.
Exactly.
We all have it and think that everything is much bigger and scarier than it actually really is. Yeah. And that is one first-hand experience I have have had. And I've had that fairly recently. I returned back to the, IT training, tech training world.
Yeah.
Only the past few years. And of course, I'm sitting there thinking, AI, oh, I don't know anything. And we've got to really think, actually, we use a lot of AI in so many things that we do in day-to-day life and probably don't even realize that we do that. So and it is only just a piece of software and we can all learn it. And it is just that part that, that taking away the fear factor. And, there's so many things I suppose we can do to help ourselves as well.
Yeah.
And, what helped you perhaps build that sort of self-confidence up a little bit, or, take that fear factor down a level or two?
Yeah, I think it's about breaking it down, because sometimes it feels like a mountain, doesn't it, in front of you, whereas you've just got to take it step by step and break it down into small bits. So I think if you've spent a long time out of the workplace, and maybe because you've had children and you've decided to wait until they start school or they're a bit older, some of the things that I did when I took my 8-year career break was I helped out. I did some voluntary work. So I did some work around the school. I did some fundraising for guide dogs. I also joined the school parents association, so the PTA. And I worked as a secretary as a PTA for a couple of years, and that just helped build up my confidence. You can do things like maybe be a school governor, maybe think about your network as well around the school or whatever area you're in. Other parents, can they help support you? Maybe have chats with previous work colleagues to find out what the working environment's like, how it is at that time. And think about is there a new network that you can get involved in? So all these things I just think help just build just your confidence, and to think about what transferable skills have you developed during that time while you've been off work. I mean, as parents, we're great organisational skills. We have to sort of juggle things that we need to get done, getting children off to school, maybe getting them to clubs and stuff. Household budgets, we're budgeting monies. That's not hugely different to managing a budget in the workplace. So it's all these skills, negotiation. There's lots of different areas that you develop outside of the workplace that you can bring into the workplace. And I think it's also looking at maybe your local college. So things like IT skills, if you are worried about things have moved on, maybe doing a refresher course. There's lots of adult educational short courses that you could get involved in, attend, just to boost those skills.
And funnily enough, that's exactly what I did years ago after the birth of my daughter. And I didn't think at the time that I would lose my confidence. And I took a couple of year gap, and I did, before I started applying for these jobs again, I've noticed there was a dip in my confidence. So I did attend my local college, and I attended a preparing to teach in the lifelong learning sector. And it was a few months course that I did on a Saturday morning. And actually it was fabulous because I had a nice couple of hour break as well. My daughter was very young at that stage. So it was lovely. And it did build up my confidence. And I remember that was a complete link into my first role back after maternity. That really did help.
So it's probably not just the content you were covering, it was just also having to walk into a room with other people that you didn't know and get yourself there and ready. That probably helped you with your confidence as much as learning that topic area as well.
Yeah, it reconfirmed that I had those skills that I then thought I didn't. And that really did help steer me in the right directions.
Yeah.
And the other thing that I often thought and felt was that I couldn't ask for help.
Yeah.
I was very much, isolated. And I think any kind of gap in work, you do feel isolated. Oh, I don't want to pull on people. Everyone else is busy. How can, and actually learning slightly the people that perhaps can help or do not mind or offering help, take them up on it, because that's what they do. That's what they want to do. But then support from friends, family, or even your network that you're in. And I didn't do enough of that, especially early on in my career. But now you know the people to perhaps go and speak again to, or bear me in mind, or could you have a quick look over my CV? what did you do? Little tricks, and where all of that isolation comes in, and then part of your sort of well-being as well, and I think it was very important, isn't it, to keep check on ourselves.
Yeah.
And one thing that I know for myself that's always made a difference in every return to work was setting aside like a worry time of half an hour. I would put my timer on and I would look and I'd write everything down that I was worried about that day, and I would basically just park it on a note on my phone, and then I'd sit there for the half an hour and then worry about it. And when it stopped the procrastination. And so that, the little things I think can make a big difference sometimes.
Yeah, I totally agree with you there. One thing that I do quite often is if I'm starting to feel that overwhelm, where everything's sort of filling up and a bit too much, or I don't know which way to go next, is I get a flip chart paper and loads of different colour pens, and it's almost that brain dump. It's just offloading everything, and then you can start thinking about, okay, where do I go with this? I think it's really important. And I think something that we would generally do is we're not good at asking for help, or we just assume that everyone's too busy or everyone else is just caught up in their own lives. And I think it's really important, you said, to just pause sometimes and just think, okay, who can help me? And to just sort of stop and say, I'm struggling a bit, or it's okay not to be okay 100% of the time. And we just assume everybody else has got it all together, but they probably haven't. They're just like us, struggling. So I think it's great sometimes just to sort of say to somebody, if you got time for a coffee or something, I'd like to just pick your brains about, you work in this industry. What was it like for you going back to work? And I think also just offering support to each other, because one of the things that when I first went back after I'd had my first daughter, I was initially a single mum when I went back to work and she went to nursery and then later school, we used to support each other covering school holidays. So I would have a day off, look after my daughter and a couple of friends' children, take them out for the day, entertain them. Then those parents would take a day off and look after my daughter and maybe a couple of other people's children. And you just do that just to help cover and just support each other and just try and take the pressure off.
Yeah, I think, again, finding the people in the same ilk as yourself that can really help. I remember, again, I utilised, my mum friends that would perhaps pick up my daughter from school that day that I was working. And it is the organisational skills that come around, especially, motherhood is remarkable. And we are so flexible and adaptable. And I feel that perhaps our skills are being overlooked in the workplace.
Definitely.
And, when we sit there and think about actually what we do as project management in our own world, those skills are so transferable to the
Definitely.
workplace. And, I also feel that, there's been a lot of, perhaps not just mums returning to work, but then when maybe we've taken some time for, caregiving, or the redundancies come in. There's so many different areas of why we might return to work, and perhaps just utilising that we might take a slightly different path. A lot more people now are going into freelancing or taking those options. And I found the flexible option for myself was self-employment for a little while.
Yeah.
And I didn't think that those skills would be transferable. At the time, you don't realise perhaps what you are doing. And, thinking about sort of the post-pandemic as well, the shift of what's happened around, we did very much work from home for quite a long time, and look how well everyone did. And now the return to work is huge. I don't know about your experience and what you've heard, but many firms are asking that people, go into the office many more days than what they're used to.
Yeah.
And so, there's a common theme, isn't it? 3 days in the office, 2 from home, if you're lucky. Or it is actually more of a push to return to that office environment. And I think that is a back step, perhaps in the wrong way. And it certainly doesn't support, women, especially when they have younger children. They're missing a trick as far as I'm concerned. What's your thoughts?
Yeah, I totally agree with you. I think, as you say, when we were in pandemic, it was solely working from home. And then we went to that majority of days working from home. If you were in industries, obviously, if you were in something like hospitality and retail, you had to 100% be there. But otherwise, you were maybe working more days from home than in the office. And now there is that total potential shift where it might be full-time back in the office or maybe only one day from home. It's really shifted round. And I think that's the thing, is it makes it really limited for parents with doing that juggle of childcare. If you're working from home, you haven't got that time you'd normally spend on a commute, which might be half an hour to an hour. So you can gain that in a day working. And I think it just puts so much more pressure. And I think organisations maybe should look at more outcome focused. So what is it you need to get done? What is it that your objectives, your KPIs, what results do they want to see? And I think as long as people are doing that and achieving that, we're grown-ups, we want to do it, we want to achieve those outcomes, then that's okay. Having people just sat in the office from 9 to 5, 9 to 6, just for the sort of feels sometimes like just for the sake of it, isn't beneficial to our work-life balance, to our mental health. And it makes it so difficult for working parents, maybe sometimes just working mums, but also working fathers as well, to be able to juggle that and do that. And I think from my last job about 3 years ago, I got made redundant and I was working part-time. I was working 2 to 3 days a week. And I was looking around for other part-time opportunities and they just weren't there. And it just makes it really difficult. And that was one of the reasons why I went freelance. It was something that I'd always wanted to do some point in my career. And it was the ideal opportunity to just do it. But one of the reasons that forced my hand was because there weren't the flexible opportunities available.
I couldn't 100% agree with you more than that there's not that flexibility. And having the companies that they're missing an opportunity where people are working from home. Many people talk to me very much openly about being able to concentrate more, they produce more and a better output when they are less distracted working from home rather than in an office environment. And we need to be there to support many different people. But the fear factor does come in, doesn't it? About you saying that your hand was forced. Yes, you would always like to have done freelancing, but it was forced in that situation. And that, I think, is still a big fear factor, that big leap, isn't it, into going into freelancing.
Yeah.
It is, how can we as women help and support each other? Have you got any networks around that you utilize perhaps in that free world?
Yeah, I mean, there's lots of women-focused networks. I'm on a couple of WhatsApp groups that are women-focused networks, and they really do support each other. So if you put in something you're struggling with, people just offer so much support in those networks. And I think it's about utilising them and just having that understanding. And I'm just sort of hope that can help feed into that working environment, because especially for some industries as well, I mean, children get sick, we get sick, and there's that pressure that, oh God, I've got to come into the office, what do? I don't want to have to phone up my line manager and say my child's not well, I can't come into work. And it's that fear that if you keep doing that, am I going to lose my job? Is there going to be a problem? So I think we just need to sort of help each other out a bit more, think about what networks, how we can get support, and just be able to feel more comfortable about having those open conversations in our workplace, about speaking to our line managers to say, look, I'm struggling a bit at the moment. This is all a bit much. Can I just have a break? Can we look at my working hours? Is there something different I can do? Working together with our own partners, and saying, maybe if I have a day where you take on the childcare today, I can work longer hours today. And then when you need to work longer hours, I can sort of maybe set days a week or something where you say, well, I'll support you this day if you support me another day. But also with the other working parents as well, as much as possible. I think it's so important to have that community around you, because a lot of us now don't live where our parents live, or we don't have family maybe living close to us. A lot of us are in that sandwich generation where we're caring for our elderly parents as well as caring for our children as well. And we're sort of pulled in all directions. And then we still want to go to work, and we've still got those skills, and we want to work. Working gives us a sense of purpose. We want to have that achievement. So it's just getting that balance right.
So having the balance, trying to look at what network we've got, what community we can use, perhaps what other things could we perhaps put into place?
I'm thinking about maybe in the workplace having women's groups, so you can maybe a mentor program. So other people that have gone through taking career breaks and gone into the workplace or taken time out that have returned to work, they can sort of mentor people that just go through that experience and sharing their experiences.
So I suppose that does come back to what can the workplace do to support? And I think that again is a big gap.
Yeah.
And, we are very much brought back into the workforce, perhaps, and it is a day or two, perhaps, of an induction of some kind, and then off you go. So, yeah, having those support groups within a firm, so mentoring, having a sort of a buddy or someone that you could go to support, but enabling that to happen. I think sometimes, those programs are there, but are they utilized enough? And I think, what can, I think maybe finding out as well what has in place. There was when I returned to work after my daughter, I've always assumed that perhaps if she had a big medical appointment and I was going to be not available for a couple of hours, that I had to take half a day's annual leave or something. Finding out if there's any caregiver leave. In practical things like that. There was a 5-day caregiver leave if you had something important, if your child was really ill or something like that in place. I didn't even realize that was available. And we're saying about very much of career breaks and especially women. We've got to touch on the subject of, menopause as well.
Yeah, definitely.
That perhaps as well is missing. And I know that there's a big thing looked into that. And we're talking about returning to work as well. But, people return to work for many different reasons. And, especially, the neurodiverse, section of our community as well.
Yeah.
How are they supported? I think there's a lot more workplace can do. It's just finding out what. But as individuals, finding out what is there and asking, I think is that.
Yeah, I think that's a big thing is we don't always ask. So we need to, there's no harm asking the question. We might not get the answer that we're necessarily looking for, but if we ask the question and enough people ask the question, then hopefully workplaces will look at what can they do? What do they need to do to evolve? So I think it's about evolving and moving forward. I mean, you had a more recent sort of return to work when you went freelance back in-house. Was there anything particularly your organisation did to support you with that?
There is some support. I think there always could be more. And that is perhaps if we find gaps, perhaps offer suggestions as well, because every company wants to get, better at this. And so if you're offering to maybe set up a work group in-house and you're prepared to do that, they're going to be there saying, thank you very much.
Yeah.
And it is sometimes just that, let's go and, have a half-hour chat about something and what's on your mind and how we can support each other. But there certainly is more, I think, every firm can do. And I think they are aware of this too.
Yeah.
So if we can offer suggestions, I always think there will be uptake.
Yeah, I love that idea of being more proactive and actually sort of asking and suggesting as well. I think workplaces are getting a lot better. I think definitely from when I returned from my first career break, that's over 20 years ago now. So I think workplaces are very different in supporting, and there are some schemes out there as well where almost like a sort of intern sort of program where organisations are doing a set amount of weeks or time where they're offering return to work programs. So I think there's more that is available if people can search for it and find it. And I think it is about developing those skills to make us feel more confident to go back into the workplace. And like you say, it's very different reasons. It could be redundancy from looking after ill parents. It could be returning from maternity leave. So there's lots of different reasons why people take that break and then decide to go back into the workplace. And I think especially when we talk about sort of more mature women, we're talking about sort of ourselves being into our 50s and thinking about all those skills that we've got that we can give to workplaces and what we've got to offer that can make us more effective in the workplace.
So organisations maybe can help all of us return maybe in a more sustainable way, that the retention's going to be there, but perhaps getting it all on the level of making us feel a bit more human about that return, building on the confidence. I was lucky enough during my look for a return to work at one stage and reaching out for some coaching. I knew that would help me. I always felt that was out of my reach, and it was something that wasn't at my level that I would get in a workplace. And so it was actually from, a women's community that someone was trying to build up their hours and fabulously offered some support. And I didn't know where to start in coaching. And I've got to say, it was invaluable to me. So it's looking and finding those areas that perhaps could be low cost, no cost, things that would actually support you. And talking about other skills, and especially sort of the tech side, we've got to think about how much tech has come forward and how much we can self-serve ourselves as well.
Yeah.
So did a lot of LinkedIn learning, for instance, looking at YouTube. I remember, during the pandemic, we couldn't have people in our house to fix our washing machines. I remember looking it up on YouTube and having a right old laugh doing it. Well, I did fix that washing machine at a time that was really needed.
Well done.
Very proud of that moment. And it's finding the things that are there for, a low cost.
Yeah.
And then, thinking about on top of our sort of routine and day to day, what we would do to help ourselves and realize, I suppose part of it actually, it's a really hard process. We know that when we're in it, we forget perhaps how hard it is and what we can do to help ourselves. Then we end up in that big circle of beating ourselves up and our confidence dropping and all the things that we don't want to happen sometimes do. And so checking on ourselves, I think, is massively important. I mentioned about that sort of worry time, perhaps making a routine, keeping to it. But the biggest thing that I think people are missing as well when they're in that horrible space is actually a bit of self-compassion.
Yeah.
Realizing it is hard. Do you know what? I am going to find my confidence dip a bit. What can I do about it? But just giving yourselves that bit of self-compassion, I think sometimes does really help us as well.
Definitely. And I think a couple of things came to mind as you were saying that. And I think it's our mindset. We can always think of 100 reasons why not to do something, but we just need to push ourselves and think about, okay, what's the worst that could happen if I did this, and just do one thing and just think of one thing probably each day that today I'm going to try, and it might not work out, but hopefully it will. And if you think enough times, you're going to start doing things that are going to work out, and just to put yourself out there, and that will help you gain confidence to move forward. And I think I love your idea of coaching as well, and gaining that. When I took a break, and I'm a qualified coach, but I hadn't coached for a while because I hadn't been in the workplace environment. And when I was thinking about getting back into it, I was offering coaching to people that I knew, people at school, friends that maybe been made redundant. So I was doing anything I could to increase my coaching skills and again gain my confidence, just to try and get over that imposter syndrome as well that I was suffering from. So I think we need to think about how we can sort of change our mindset to think, okay, I'm going to give this a try.
And talking about freelancing and the fear of going into that, I will jump on that and say, absolutely, give it a go. What's the worst can happen?
Yeah.
And took me, when I was looking for a flexible role, I did return to work and then thought, because of the lack of flexibility and the fear factor at the time when my daughter was very young, of being so far away, if something happened, I wasn't close enough. There were so many different areas that made me feel uncomfortable that I wanted to go into the freelance world. And I looked at various options at the time, and it was a random thing that happened. I went to a baby class with my daughter when she was very young, under a year. And it was very much, there was, bubbles, parachutes and songs. And, we've all probably been to one of those. But it was great fun. And I just remember sitting there on that first one going, I could do that. That would be brilliant fun. And at the time I thought, okay, could I utilize and do something like that? Use my transferable skills in training and perhaps run a baby class of sorts. I looked at franchises, funny enough, first off, because I thought, that'd be great. It all could be set up and I could have my area. That fell through. And I remember I was in tears. I was absolutely gutted. But on the flip side of that, I thought, I can do that. I've got all the skills to be able to put a class together. How would I run a business? Let me find out about. So it fueled me to actually then start it up on my own, which I did for a while. And I did it for many years. It was fantastic.
Oh, brilliant.
And then got government contracts. There was always little ways.
Yeah.
But I always parked that thinking it was something I did as a mum to bring in some pennies. When I did return and back into the industry world, and we talked about that, especially in interviews, they were like, well, that was fantastic. I didn't realise the skills that were so much transferred.
Yeah.
We underestimate ourselves so much as women, I think. That was a great way. So it's just looking at different options in your environment that would interest you. And we all talk about if you have something you want to do, they're having that passion behind something, it will drive you. But sometimes you've also got to make sure that the ends meet somehow. So when another life occurrence, and I needed to think about getting more money in, I also ran the baby classes that were clearly not particularly, income heavy.
Yeah.
And then I started to do some other freelance work and associate work for learning and development. And so I did various amounts of different jobs. I think that's what built up that sort of flexibility and built it around what I needed to at the time.
Yeah.
But it was hard, but great fun. But it did exactly what I wanted to do. So it's just finding those different little areas and exploring them and having, I suppose, that grit, determination, and that, just keep going, because what is the worst that can happen? And for instance, my fear was no one's going to turn up to my baby class.
Yeah.
What have I done? And it wasn't the case at all. I offered free trials. There was always, there was groups that I, offered out into, any kind of sort of tech networking space at the time. It worked. And then, of course, know again in that sort of freelancing space and in any environment, I think it's that word of mouth. If someone's looking for instance, a fabulous coach like Jo, then people that you've coached around can say, well, yeah, do you know what? I've had coaching with Jo and it was fabulous. It's those kind of things, word of mouth, and just keeping that sort of community open really helped.
And that made me think about something I did for a short while. I did pottery painting parties just because it was convenient. I could do it a weekend when my husband was around to do childcare, so that was all fine. So I did that for a little while. And I think it is that determination. It was like I wanted to do something, and it wasn't necessarily for me because I had a group of children, but I wanted to do something. And I think sometimes we have to think what's right for us for now. We might not be what we want to do for our long-term career, but that works for now, and that's okay. And like you say, when you went for interviews, you could talk about lots of skills that you used for what you were doing then, and they were transferable as well. So I think we need to look at it sort of like chapters in our life where we do, this is right for now. In 5 years' time, I might be in a different situation. I'll do something different then because that will work better for me then. So I think it's about reviewing and just not beating ourselves up that we have to have everything all at once, because that doesn't always work. We have mum guilt and everything else, and it's just take a step back, do what's right for now, focus on that work-life balance, I think is really important.
And we often think that everyone has got it all together, and there's no one in the world that has everything all together. It is not the case, is it? And I think just realizing that we all are spinning so many different plates all the time, and and it's just reality.
Yeah.
And you're right, something might not work right now, or it does, but it's what right now is what really matters, isn't it?
Be in the moment. And I think we just assume everyone's got those Instagram lovely looking lives, and it's just not at all. So it's just do the best you can with where you are right now.
I think returning to work it's not at that single moment, is it? It is a complete and utter roller coaster that touches every aspect of our world. And I think anything any of us can do to help is always, of benefit for any person out there, whether, we're women, and, we've got to think about men as well. There's completely different pressures as well surrounding them. So perhaps a podcast around men into work at some stage beneficial.
because men take career breaks, men go through redundancy, they take time out, they have to then return to work. So yeah, I think definitely. And I think just kind of finishing off on the subject of returning to work, I think returning to work does give us a sense of purpose. It's really good sometimes, I think, to just push ourselves out of our comfort zones, give us those challenges. And I think that's what makes us grow as women, and to just take a chance and just try it. And sometimes when you go back through into work, and it feels like really hard to get into the workplace because you're having to drop children off at childcare. But once you get into the office, you can achieve something, you can grow as a person. And it is just getting into that new routine. So what feels really different for the first and really hard for the first couple of weeks, in 6 months' time, when you got back into that routine, becomes a lot more your new normal as well.
Yeah, I think returning to work is certainly something that is, you're not going back to the person you were before, whether it be a mum returning to work, whether it be through redundancy, a career break, even travel, if you're fortunate enough to, whatever break you've had, you are not going back to the person you were before. It's all about, I suppose, moving forward with everything that you have gained.
It's part of life, isn't it? It's part of us growing as people and moving forward.
And I think just keeping that open conversation real with everyone and asking what their experience is, and not forgetting to ask for help.
And being brave and to sort of say when you're struggling and you need a bit more support. It's been a really great conversation.
It has been. Thank you so much for your time, Jo. I really appreciate it.
No, it's been great to learn more about you, Claire, as well. Thank you.
Ditto.
This is such an interesting listen. We love the advice our guest said. Remember to break down the process into small steps, ask for help when needed, and utilize practical techniques to manage anxiety. With these strategies, women can successfully navigate their return to work and thrive in their careers. A massive thank you to Claire and Jo for their time, and you find all their details along with links to the subjects they spoke about in the show notes. Please do remember to like and subscribe to the podcast on your podcast player. It does make a real difference in helping people find and recommend us. We're looking for guests for our next block of topics. Check these out on our website, and if you're interested, please get in touch via email to hello@larn.com. We'll be back in a couple of weeks, and next time it's The Grief One. As always, thank you for listening, and we'll see you again soon.